So we're here in the sim at Santa Barbara, about to make a flight down the coast to Oxnard. And the sim that we're using today is X-Plane 11, and just the default Cessna 172 SP model, which is a pretty good flight model for just a default aircraft. And the panel that I'm running here that you see is SimAvio by Fly the Sim. And Fly the Sim is the company that makes the Touch Trainer. This is really the same software as is in the Touch Trainer. And so you'll see me interacting on the screen with Touch. So the route that I have programmed into ForeFlight here is the one that's dictated by the tech route system, Tower and Route Control. And it's Quang and then the Camarillo VOR. So with Tower and Route Control, you know exactly what you're going to get for your cleared route. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of it. What we don't necessarily know is how we're going to get onto that route. So that leg from Santa Barbara to Quang, that could be vectors and then direct Quang. It could be we could be intercepting the San Marcos radial that's depicted here. We could be intercepting Victor 186 or Victor 27, I suppose it is, out west here to Quang. So we'll see when we call for clearance what we get specifically there. It could even be a departure procedure. There's some SIDs out of Santa Barbara that include Quang on the procedure. So we're sitting on the ramp here. We're at, I believe, Atlantic Aviation. Yeah, Atlantic Aviation on the southeast ramp, and we're going to turn on the avionics and get the ATIS and then give clearance a call. Okay, we have the avionics up here. We have information Gulf, and clearance delivery is tuned on the COM2, so we'll give them a call and pick up our clearance. Santa Barbara clearance Skyhawk 252 Romeo Kilo IFR to Oxnard, information Gulf.
November 252 Romeo Kilo Santa Barbara clearance, standby clearance on request.
Thank you.
November 252 Romeo Kilo cleared to the Oxnard Airport on departure, flight runway heading. Expected radar vectors to Quang, then is filed. Climb and maintain 3000. Departure frequency 120.55, squawk 6572.
Clear Oxnard, runway heading, expect radar vectors to Quang, 3000, departure 120.55, squawk 6572, Skyhawk 252, Romeo Kilo.
Skyhawk 252 Romeo Kilo, read back correct.
Okay, so let's set up as much of that as we can. 6572 in the transponder. We'll put it on altitude mode so they can see us with their ground radar here at Santa Barbara. 120.55 will go in our standby. 12055.
Transient parking ramp information Kilo ready for taxi.
Runway heading, we don't know which runway that's going to be yet, and it'll be radar vectors to Quang. So let's get the rest of the frequencies set up, and then we'll program the route in there. So what we want is ground will be next on 121.7.
Citation, or Epic 55 Victor Whiskey, runway 26 right, taxi via Alpha.
And the tower frequency is 119.7.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to identify myself. Ground, taxi 26 right via Alpha.
Taxi 26 right via Alpha, Epic 55 Victor Whiskey.
All right, so we have ground in the COM2, then we'll switch to COM1 for the tower, and we have departure, Santa Barbara departure in the standby there. Let's program the route into the GPS. We'll go to the flight plan, activate the cursor. Quang will be first, but we'll be getting radar vectors there. And then Camarillo VOR. And then the Oxnard Airport. I also want to put in, so let's look at the plates I have set up here actually. We've got the Santa Barbara Airport diagram first, and then the ILS runway 7 into Santa Barbara, and this is in case something happens and we need to get back in. The wind favors the opposite direction. It favors 25, but the ILS to runway 7 is the only one that could get us low enough right now with the ceiling at about 300. So we have that plate ready, and I'm going to put the localizer in the nav 1. So that's ready to go if we need it. And then we'll be going to 3000. If I had an altitude bug, I would set that. I'll set the heading bug as soon as we know what runway we're getting. And because I'm going to have to turn the avionics off when I start the airplane, I'll lose this flight plan here, so I do want to save that. So we'll go to Menu and down to Copy Flight Plan.
Over 7977 X-ray Gillespie ground.
And there it goes in Flight Plan 3, so we'll be able to load that back up. Okay, so let's start it up and get ready to go. So now we can see our flight plan is missing because we turned off the avionics. So we'll go over to the second page on the flight plan group, hit the cursor, scroll down to number 3, Santa Barbara to Oxnard, Menu, and then activate flight plan. And it's set up for Santa Barbara direct Quang. We're not doing that initially. Initially we're runway heading and then radar vectors, and at some point we'll get cleared direct to Quang, but it'll be ready to go when we want it. CDI is on GPS mode. So before taxi, the mixtures are set, ATIS and clearance has been copied, avionics and transponder are set, bugs and radios are set. We'll get the heading bug when we get a runway. Trim has been checked and it's set for takeoff, and we'll get the taxi check when we start rolling. So we're on ground right now, and we're at Atlantic Aviation. I'm expecting we'll get runway 25, and it'll be Bravo and Alpha and Golf most likely. We are in a non-movement area here. I can pull out a little bit beyond the buildings. The Santa Barbara ground, Skyhawk 252 Romeo Kilo, Atlantic Aviation, taxi with Golf.
Skyhawk 252 Romeo Kilo, Santa Barbara ground, runway 25, taxi via Bravo Alpha Golf.
Bravo Alpha Golf 25, Skyhawk 252 Romeo Kilo. So the checklist then, now we've done a before takeoff flow, we'll run the checklist to verify. So seat backs and belts are good, flight instruments have been set and checked, fuel quantity is good, we got about half tanks, which is fine for this flight. Fuel selectors on both. We skipped the run-up because it's a simulator and we don't care about practicing that right now. We've checked the annunciators. The throttle was checked at idle. Lights are good. We'll get the landing light and the pitot heat also when we take the runway. Mixture is rich. Flaps are up. Trim is set. Controls are free and correct. On departure, we're runway heading up to 3,000. And we're expecting radar vectors to Quang. If anything should go wrong and we need a return, we've got the ILS to runway 7. We have the frequency and the standby and the plate in our binder, and we will start the time in the transponder here to count up from our departure time. Santa Barbara Tower, Skyhawk 252 Romeo Kilo is ready for departure short of 25 IFR.
Sky 252 Romeo Kilo, Santa Barbara Tower. Wind 1905 and 125, clear for takeoff.
25 clear for takeoff, Skyhawk 252 Romeo Kilo. Okay, final looks clear as far as we can see. Lights,
Epic 5, Victor
camera,
and
action.
Navigation.
Entered runway 25, 6,000 feet remaining.
There's runway 25. That matches the heading indicator. Let's spin the heading bug to the runway heading here also. And here we go.
Palm Springs Tower, Cardinal 35091's ready.
So there's
to go
RPM.
31 right to IFR.
Engine gauges look good. Airspeed's alive. Center line.
Number 35091, Palm Springs Tower, runway 31 right, clear for takeoff.
Clear for takeoff, 091.
And we're off. VY is 74 knots. I know that about 10 degrees of pitch gets me that. Trimming for that in the climb. And we're just on runway heading until we hear something else. At about 1,000 feet, we're going to transition to a cruise climb here, about 6 degrees of nose up pitch. Should give us about 90 knots. Trimming for that as we accelerate. Engine gauges look good. The oil temperature is pretty high. It's always high in this plane in the sim. That's something that would be easy to tweak in PlaneMaker, which comes with X-Plane. But just haven't done it. So we're still runway heading, 1,500, climbing to 3,000, waiting for the handoff to departure.
Number 5, Victor Whiskey, contact LA Center 128.6. Number 252 Romeo Kilo, contact departure.
Contact departure, Skyhawk 252 Romeo Kilo. Santa Barbara departure, Skyhawk 252 Romeo Kilo, 2,200, climbing 3,000.
252 Romeo Kilo, Santa Barbara departure, radar contact. 55 Victor Whiskey, LA Center, Roger, Ramona, altimeter 29990.
Alright, 500 feet to go. We're still on runway heading.
252 Romeo Kilo, turn left heading 170, vector decline.
Left to 170, Skyhawk 2 Romeo Kilo.
Number 350901, contact SoCal departure.
So 200 feet to go now. We're in the turn to 170. And we'll pitch for a level flight here.
350901, SoCal departure, radar contact, climb maintain 10,000.
So pitch for level flight, trim for it, let the airplane accelerate before we pull the power back. That'll make this process.
252 Romeo Kilo, turn left heading 080.
Left to 080, Skyhawk 252 Romeo Kilo. Now we're about at our cruise speed, so I'm going to bring the power back to about 2,500 RPM. Doing that by sound and by feel initially, and then we just cross-check it. That lets me keep my scan going. It's easy to get distracted by staring at the RPM and trying to fine-tune it. But we can get it in the ballpark just by sound. But anyway, setting the pitch and letting the airplane accelerate before you set the power makes that transition happen more quickly, which means there's less time where you're transitioning with trim.
172 Sierra Papa, Palmar Tower 555. Number 252 Romeo Kilo, turn right heading 100, clear direct climb.
Right to 100 direct clank, Skyhawk 252 Romeo Kilo. Alright, 100, we can center this up direct to Quang. And our desired track is actually 093. We can set the OBS to that. Set our heading bug to that. We have 18 miles to Quang. Let's go back to the nav1 page where we have track and desired track. Makes it really easy to set up a wind correction amount.
And 77 X-ray climb, maintain
And we can
8,000.
lean for cruise. going to go 75 to 100 on the rich side of peak here. And the landing light can come off. And then let's do our cruise checklist, which is just power and mixture. And lights and switches. And we're on our way. Now, it's a relatively short flight, so we're pretty quickly going to be in the arrival environment here. So I want to get everything set up as early as possible. We are going to request the GPS 26 approach into Oxnard. But let's switch over to the airport page here for Oxnard. And let's see if we can get the ATIS, 118.05. I didn't have any luck getting the ATIS on the COM 2 on the way out. I had to use the COM 1. So we'll see if it works here.
Oxnard Information Hotel.
Perfect.
000 Zulu weather. Wind 250 at 11. Visibility 1. Rain. Sky conditions 250 overcast. Temperature 2.23. Altimeter 2991. Arriving runway 25. Departing runway 25. Advise on initial contact. You have hotel.
Okay, so we have hotel. We have the altimeter set, and the weather's going to be right at minimums for this approach. Winds are 250 at 11, so pretty much down the runway.
Chandler, ground system 584.
Let's preload the tower frequency in there then as well, 134.95.
4 Lima, Quebec, 555.
Yeah, let's try and get that needle back centered.
And San Luis ground system 4 Lima, Quebec, was at ramp requesting pattern work with Oscar, and this is the Cat 3 flight.
So the track and desired track and cross-track error combination is really helpful here.
584 Lima,
We've got a
Quebec,
100 heading, which is
right.
resulting in a 097 track. 098 now, so it's a 5-degree intercept angle, and that cross-track error of 0.15 is going to slowly come back to 0.
Yeah, Cessna 182 Skyline. 4 Lima, Quebec, thank you, runway 25, taxi via Juliet, Mike.
Let's grab that approach
25 via
blade
Juliet, Mike for 4 Lima, Quebec.
at Oxnard, and we can load the procedure, and we'll brief it once we're assigned it. I have looked at it a little bit in advance, so I'm familiar with it. So we'll go procedure, select approach, RNAV 25, and I expect we're going to get vectors. None of the initial approach fixes really make sense from where we're coming from, but I don't like to load vectors to final. It's generally considered best practice to activate a leg rather than that, because when you activate a leg, you don't lose the fixes outside of the final approach fix, whereas you do when you activate vectors to final. And it still allows you, should the plan change, to pick a different fix to go direct to other than the final approach fix. So what I'm going to do is load, it doesn't really matter too much here. I'm going to go with WOTOC, and we'll just load the approach. It'll tack it onto the end of our flight plan here. So WOTOC, CESP, QDAC, Hoopla, that should be Nelly, Kukum, runway 25, our missed approach point, and then Pukey and Squid. So that all matches, and then the hold. And what I'll do when we actually get, when we start getting vectored for this approach, is I'll activate the leg, probably the leg from QDAC to Hoopla, because I expect that's where we'll intercept. The intercept has to be at least 2 miles outside of the final approach fix, generally. And Hoopla's only 3 miles outside there, so I expect we'll probably be around Hoopla or slightly after it. And that gives us a little more flexibility than if we selected vectors to final.
Number 777 X-ray, so approach, roger.
I can predict that the next frequency we get might be Point Mugu approach on 124.7. Because that's the one that's listed on our approach plate. And we'll probably start getting vectored shortly after Quang. So I'm going to start briefing this approach right now, and we may get interrupted with the frequency change, but that's okay. I'm confident enough that we're going to be doing this approach. If it's not this, it'll be the ILS. But I'm going to specifically request this. It has exactly the same minimums as the ILS. So we have the RNAV runway 25 at Oxnard. Expiration on this is July 20th, 2017, so we're current. Final approach course is 256. Runway distance is 5,500 and the touchdown's at 44 feet. Our notes are about inoperative tables, Baro VNav, DME, RMP, local altimeter settings, and helicopter. None of that applies to us. We have the ATIS, it's Information Hotel, where we have Point Mugu approach in the standby for COM 1 and Oxnard Tower ready to go in COM 2. We're probably getting vectors to final here somewhere outside of Nelly. Between Kudak and Hoopla, we can go down to 3,700. Then after Hoopla, 3,200, and then we'll follow the glide path down to our LPV minimums of 294, which is 250 feet above the touchdown zone.
Terminal ground, Caravan.
Missed approach is a climb to 2,000, direct to Pukey.
Over the west side, taxi for a east departure.
124.7, Sky, turn wheel.
2 Romeo Alpha, Camarillo ground.
Yeah, we'll call them in just a moment. But so our missed approach was direct Pukey, 2,000 direct to Pukey, and then to squid and hold with what looks like a teardrop entry. And on landing will be a left turn off to the FBO on the southeast side of the field. Pomagu approach Skyhawk 252 Romeo Kilo level 3000. Information hotel and request the GPS 25 via vectors.
252 Romeo Kilo, Pomagu approach, roger, expect that.
Thank you. Okay, so one habit I have, I try to keep, is that when I get a frequency change like that and they give us an altimeter setting on a check-in, which he actually didn't here, but that's sort of a trigger for me to go through my entire flow. So I would start with the altimeter, go to the rest of the flight instruments, including the heading indicator, then down to the engine gauges, then across the bottom we go to the switches, fuel selector, mixture, flaps, and then back up across the radios and make sure everything's set. These are things that you try to tell yourself you're going to do periodically, but it's hard to remember to just do something periodically. So having a trigger for that is useful, and in this case, with the start of my flow being the flight instruments getting an altimeter setting, which happens, you know, every 10 to 30 minutes on an IFR flight, is a pretty convenient way to do it, I think. I could put ground in the standby here as well. I doubt we'll get a handoff to ground.
252 Romeo Kilo, climb maintain 4,000.
Maintain 4,000, Sky 252 Romeo Kilo. Alright, so probably a higher minimum vectoring altitude in this area than 3,000. And in fact, there's higher altitudes than 3,000 on the approach. It's good to have an awareness of what the terrain looks like. I know we've been over the water where the ground is obviously at sea level, and flying inland there is some taller terrain. I mean, I can see just on this plate at the north end here, I can see terrain all the way up to 5,000. I can see spot elevations above 3,000 to the south of our approach course. So we do want to have an awareness of that. One way to do that is by going back to the maps page and pulling up the synthetic vision.
To Romeo Kilo, fly heading 070 back to 25.
Heading 070, Scott, to Romeo Kilo. And now that we're off a heading, we're not tracking a nav course anymore. We're free to set up the GPS for the approach.
Portland to Quebec negative.
let's go into our flight plan, get the cursor, and we're going to go down
Alpha, frequency change approved.
to Hoopla and activate the leg to Hoopla. So there's a couple ways we can do that. We can either go to menu and activate leg, or the shortcut for that is to go direct, and then rather than hitting enter to select direct to Hoopla, hit direct again, and it switches to activate leg. Activate leg Hudak to Hoopla, that's what we want. And now we're set there, and we can set our final approach course of 256 on the OBS, just as a reference. You never need to actually choose activate approach on the 430. All activate approach does is send you direct to the initial approach fix.
Romeo Alpha, SoCal push right.
So in this case, all that's necessary is to, I mean, you can manually go in and choose direct to a fix that you're going direct to, or in this case, we've activated a leg that we're going to intercept.
We got 2 Romeo Alpha, SoCal push rudder, squawk 6354.
But if you thought you needed to actually choose activate approach on the approach, you know, and you thought you forgot to do that, and so somewhere on the approach you decide to go to menu and activate approach, that's going to send you all the way back to the initial approach fix.
At 252 Romeo Kilo, turn right heading 140.
Right to 140 Sky 252 Romeo Kilo.
At 252 Romeo Kilo, turn right heading 170, just to maintain 3,700.
170 down to 3,700 Sky 2 Romeo Kilo.
7977 X-ray, to maintain 4,200. Our 77 X-ray contact, San Bernardino Tower, 119.45.
So there's 90 knots. In addition to my moving map, I can look at the cross-track error on the GPS that tells me I'm 1.5 miles from the inbound course.
252 Romeo Kilo, 2 miles from Hoopla, turn right heading 230, maintain 3,700 until established on the final approach course. Cleared RNAV, runway 25 approach.
Right to 230, 3,700 until established, cleared RNAV 25, Skyhawk 2 Romeo Kilo. Alright, here's 230, we're at 3,700. I'm going to set the bug now to the inbound course of 255. And we'll just fly this heading until the needle comes in, and here it comes. We're 0.8 from Hoopla. After Hoopla, we can go down to 3,200. And we have an LPV annunciation as we pass Hoopla. Glide slope is alive. And I'm actually going to, rather than stepping down to 3,200 and picking up the glide slope there, I'm just going to wait here at 3,700 for a little bit and follow the glide slope down
2 Romeo Alpha,
from
contact
here.
Burbank Tower, 118.7.
And joining the final approach course is my trigger to run the before landing checklist. So it's just fuel on both, mixture rich. Switches, including the landing light, can come up, and seat belts. And then we'll just verify that as we cross Nelly, we're at 3,200 feet on the glide slope. So here comes the glide slope. Power comes back to about 1,800 RPM.
252 Romeo Kilo, contact Oxnard Tower, 134.95.
134.95, Skyhawk 2 Romeo Kilo. See ya. Switch to the tower. I'm transitioning onto the glide slope here at this point, so I'm going to make sure we get stabilized and then give the tower a call. So our power set, it's about 2 degrees down is the attitude that takes us down at 500 feet per minute. We have a heading pretty much dialed in that's correcting for wind. 1 mile to Nelly, and let's give the tower a call. Oxnard Tower, Skyhawk 252 Romeo Kilo, GPS 25.
252 Romeo Kilo, Oxnard Tower, wind 270 at 15 at 135 clear land.
25 clear line, Skyhawk 252 Romeo Kilo. Alright, so I'm heading at 260 here. We have a track also of 260, pretty much just a direct headwind. And what's happening here as the needle moves out is it's just getting more sensitive. The sensitivity is ramping up. I'm not getting further away from it. And in fact, in the sim, I think that happens a little bit too quickly. So we just passed Nelly at 3,200. Our before landing check is complete. We're going down to 294. And I've got a heading set up here that has a 6-degree intercept angle, which is plenty. As we get further down in this approach, that needle gets really sensitive, and our heading corrections, you know, really shouldn't be any more severe than this. This pitch attitude and power setting is giving us 90 knots, and we're coming down at just under 500 feet per minute, which is working out real nice for what our ground speed is. So now heading comes back to 255, which is resulting in a track of 256.
Hey, Charlie, now for the parking 77 extra.
And that should keep the needle right in the center. We'll see how much that changes as we go down, but the track and desired track make this pretty easy to come up with a heading that corrects for wind. There's 2,600 for 300. We are clear to land on runway 25. Just a small correction to the right to bring the needle back to the center. One thing that is a little bit of a bug in this GPS is the cross-track error there. It's telling us we're 0.12 miles off course, but we're really 0.012 miles off course at the most. As this scales down, that the cross-track error still kind of takes it as if it were 1 mile full deflection. But that's a bug in the software that's modeling the GPS. 2,300 for 300, so 2,000 feet to go yet. Just a touch low. We'll raise the pitch attitude by half a bar width. You can see the vertical speed come back to about 400 at that pitch attitude. That's all the correction we need. I think it's definitely a good idea to do some of these approaches just visually, comparing what the needles tell you with what you see out the window, because it's tempting to make much more aggressive course corrections than are necessary. But if you're looking out the window, you can correlate the needle with what it looks like visually, and you're a lot less likely to do that. This is a long final approach segment here, almost 10 miles, and we're doing it at 80 knots ground speed, so it takes a while. Heading drifted a little bit, so let's get the course correction back in. It's about a 5-degree intercept angle. Crossing Kukum. Kukum's listed as 1720 as a minimum on the LNAV only. That's what the asterisk refers to on the chart. But we just continue following the glide slope. And this is where the outer marker is for the ILS here. Yeah, so I like to be stabilized the whole way down. You know, I like to get it to my approach speed by the final approach fix, so we don't have to change anything inside of there until we actually see the runway and decide to land. This being such a long final approach segment, it's taking a while, and I mean, I might have flown this approach a little faster, 100 or 105 knots or something like that. If I were to do it again. So 900 feet to go, we're 1200 for 300. Before landing check is complete and we're clear to land on runway 25. Our missed approach would be straight ahead to 3000 to Pukey initially. Straight ahead to 2000 to Pukey actually. There's 1000 for 300. Yeah, you really want to have the minimums committed to memory. That 294, or I'm using 300 for that here. And you'd really also like to have the initial missed approach instructions committed to memory. So straight ahead to 2000 to Pukey. Because we don't want to be getting down to minimums and going missed and having to look at the chart. The 500, or, yeah, 500 to go. Just slightly left of course. Got a heading to correct for that right now. Pretty well on the glide slope.
500.
So 600 for 300. For 300, 200 to go. $100 to go. And there's the approach lights. And I have the threshold and the pappies. So we start the power coming back. We're in the flap arc, so there's 10 degrees of flaps. 20, and we'll just leave it at 20 for now, rather than destabilizing things further. Still a bit fast, so we might land a little bit long, but that'll happen when you fly these approaches right to minimums. We have a 6,000 foot runway, so we got plenty of room in a 172. And we'll take it down to Charlie.
Left Charlie, parking via Foxtrot, good day.
Left Charlie, parking via Foxtrot, Skyhawk, 2 Kilo, good day. So that was fun. We were pretty much right at minimums when the approach lights popped out of the fog. That lets us go down to 100 feet above the touchdown zone. But shortly after that, I had the threshold lights and even the pappies, both of which let you go down and land, provided you're in a position that you can make a normal landing from and you have the required flight visibility. So after landing checklists, flaps can come up. We'll lean the mixture, trim set for the next takeoff. And we can get the switches squared away. P2 can come off, landing light off. And we're going to taxi in on Foxtrot. So you can see kind of the trade-off there in between wanting to fly the approach a little bit faster versus you know, being able to land from that speed. If we're really flying to minimums, if you're a lot faster than 90 knots, the transition you have to be a little bit more aggressive with, or you know, or you're landing on the second half of the runway. Here it's a 6,000 foot runway. It's not a big deal if we landed, you know, a little bit beyond the touchdown zone. But if we had to do that approach at 110 knots or something like that, our best forward speed for traffic, we could float a long way down if we're not pretty aggressive upon seeing the runway, power to idle, get the flaps in. And when you've flown a long flight in the clouds, this is a short flight, but when you've been in the clouds for a decent period of time, and then all of a sudden you're transitioning from instruments to landing the airplane and trying to see the runway, that sort of aggressive maneuvering or aggressive decelerating can be a challenge. Alright, so switches, including the avionics off, we'll lean the mixture. And when the prop stops, ignition and master. And thanks for watching.